What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Behind Show. Today is September 4th, 2021. And in this video, I want to kind of continue my series here, doing some divisional previews for each NFL division. I recently did one with the AFC West with a couple people a couple of days ago. This one's going to be of the AFC South. In my opinion, I think the AFC South is without a doubt the worst division in the NFL right now. You have the Colts, you have the Titans, two playoff contenders. And then you have the Jaguars, who have a rookie quarterback on Trevor Lawrence. And then you have the Texans, who are just really, really bad. I mean, nobody knows what's going on with the Texans right now. The Deshaun Watson, allegations and everything like that. Let's go ahead and get started here. We'll start off with the Texans first because they're without a doubt the worst team in this division and really the NFL. So some of the departures here, obviously they lost J.J. Watt to the Arizona Cardinals in the offseason. That really hurts them a lot. J.J. Watt is not really what he used to be. He's only had one season with 10 sacks since 2016, I believe. But you look at Watt, he's been so much the Houston organization. He's their best player in franchise history, in my opinion. So losing him, you really lose a big, leadership player in Watt. That's really going to suck. Him no longer there in Houston. You also lose Will Fuller as well. Nice, decent receiver to the Miami Dolphins. So that just really hurts your quarterback, whether it's Davis Mills, Tyrod Taylor, whoever. That means you're not going to have quite as many weapons. And on the Texans' departures here, I know I have Deshaun Watson as a departure, but he's never going to play for the Texans again. He's going to be traded eventually. He once traded. The Texans have said they have no intention of trading him, but he's going to be traded eventually, so they can at least get something out of nothing if these allegations were to be true. But with Watson not playing another second for the Houston Texans again, I'm going to go ahead and put him on the departures because, that's a huge player you're losing. Deshaun Watson is top 7, top 8 quarterback in the NFL, and him no longer playing for your organization absolutely crushes, your team. Losing him and J.J. Watt in the same offseason is going to hurt just so much for Houston. And that's part of the reason why I believe, they're not going to be really good this year at all. And a couple of their additions, they're not really great additions by any means. They're just, decent ones. They brought in running back Philip Lindsay from the Denver Broncos, who I think is actually really, really underrated. He's had some nice years with the Denver Broncos the past couple of seasons. They also bring in running back Mark Ingram from the Baltimore Ravens. They have a nice group of running backs, Ingram, Philip Lindsay, and they have David Johnson. But they don't have a quarterback. They don't have a defense. They don't have any great receivers. Aside from running back, they don't really have a good position group, in my opinion, at all. It's going to be a long year for Houston. Don't be surprised if they pick first next season. So kind of going to the next team here on the AFC South, in my opinion, will end up third in the standings, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jaguars did not lose many people in the offseason, but they actually gained a lot of players. They lost wide receiver Keelan Cole in the offseason, and they also traded linebacker Joe Sherbert to the Pittsburgh Steelers a couple weeks ago, which to me, that trade just really went under the radar. I did not even hear about that till a day or so after it happened. Joe Sherbert, his experience with Jacksonville was not really what they expected it to be. They were kind of more expecting it more to be during his days in Cleveland, be a very, very nice linebacker, and that was certainly not the case. But these are really the only big departures for the Jaguars. And, they've gained so many players in the offseason, whether it's draft picks or different things like that. And, I don't know if you would call it a key departure or not. But, they traded Gardner Minshew for a 6th-round pick to the Philadelphia Eagles. Minshew, to me, is a really nice backup quarterback. And I feel like I know they have C.J. Beathard as Lawrence's backup. But with Minshew, to me, I feel like they could have got more at that point. If I'm the Jaguars, I probably would have just ended up keeping him because I'd rather have Gardner Minshew stay on my team than just get a 6th-round pick. But these departures for Jacksonville, I really don't think are going to hurt them that bad. But some of their additions here, they had quite a few additions. They bring in a quarterback who's first overall pick, and Trevor Lawrence. He's going to be their franchise quarterback for the next 10 to 15 years. They bring in his, running back who he played with in college, Travis Etienne. Very, very questionable pick, in my opinion, whether I like it or not. That's still a huge addition to the Jacksonville Jaguars offense. But it is announced that Etienne will be out for the year due to a injury. So expect James Robinson, who was phenomenal last season, and they also signed Carlos Hyde, who spent time with Urban Meyer at Ohio State, to have some more running back depth. They signed defensive tackle Malcolm Brown from New Orleans Saints, getting more depth at defensive line, because that's something the Jaguars did not have at all last season. I mean, they were starting undrafted free agents last year, and their defensive tackle position group especially was one of the worst in the NFL last year. They also bring in Marvin Jones Jr., a wide receiver who's played the past couple of years with the Detroit Lions. I think that's really, really smart here for Urban Meyer and the Jacksonville Jaguars to bring in an experienced wide receiver to kind of help that leadership and that mentor role on the Jaguars. Because you look at the Jaguars team, they have a lot of young players, but not many of those players have a whole lot of experience. That also kind of goes for the same thing, with Malcolm Brown as well. He's played in NFC Championship games before, with the Saints in the playoffs many times. So I think when you're getting these leadership players who've been in the NFL for quite some time, it could really go a long way for some of these young teams. So this Jaguars offense here and defense, really, this offseason for them was absolutely phenomenal. I think they did a fantastic job. Kind of going into this third team here, who I believe will probably end up being second in the AFC South, and that is the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans did have a nice offseason. They brought in a couple of nice players, but I really feel like their departures are not being talked about enough. They lost Adam Humphries, the wide receiver, to the Washington football team. Humphries is not a great receiver, but he's pretty decent. They also lost Corey Davis to the New York Jets. Corey Davis had a breakout year this past season. So I mean, right off the bat, you're losing two quality wide receivers for Ryan Tannehill. And, to me, that's not really a good idea. Maybe you keep one or so, but losing both of your top two, some of your top receivers from last season is not really a good idea for Tennessee. They also lost Adoree Jackson to the Giants in the offseason. You're losing some wide receiver help, and you're also losing some corner help as well. Not really, good there. Those are three starters already. And then you lose Jonnu Smith, a tight end who has been really, really good the past couple of years, to the New England Patriots. You have three starters and three players who have a vital piece in the Tennessee Titans offense with Ryan Tannehill. You lose them in the offseason with Humphries, Corey Davis, and Jonnu Smith. I really feel like those, departures are going unnoticed. You also lose Jadeveon Clowney. Clowney honestly really sucked during his time with the Tennessee Titans. He did not have a single sack last year. In the Titans, the one thing I'm not really sold on them is their defense. I believe they were last year in sacks, which is definitely not good at all. But with the Titans, it's interesting. Like I mentioned, they lost some of these top weapons in offense, and they lost Jadeveon Clowney, who is a nice edge rusher, and even a corner, Adoree Jackson. But they kind of made up for it with their additions. They traded to get future Hall of Famer receiver Julio Jones from the Atlanta Falcons. They pretty much robbed the Falcons with that trade there. They also signed Bud Dupree from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bud Dupree, last season barely played any due to a season-ending injury. So you have that. The signing's great, but the fact that he's coming off a season-ending injury, isn't really good for Tennessee. But I would much rather have Bud Dupree than Jadeveon Clowney. I feel like every single person would. And also they were really, really lucky able to get Caleb Farley, the cornerback from Virginia Tech. But he also has some injury issues too. That's honestly why he fell so low in the draft. He fell around the 20 range. He's had some back issues. But, Caleb Farley will end up being, a Adoree Jackson replacement in the, Tennessee Titans secondary. So, with the Titans, I feel like these additions are really nice. And for the most part, they were able to, cancel out some big departures in the offseason. But with the Titans, to me, I'm not completely sold on them. It's more so I'm not really sold on Tannehill. But kind of going into our last team here in the AFC South, in my opinion, the obvious favorites should definitely be the favorites, in my opinion, and the Indianapolis Colts. In the offseason, the Colts really did not lose anybody of huge importance. They lost backup quarterback Jacoby Brissett. And Jacoby Brissett was okay when he started with the Indianapolis Colts. But to me, I feel like it's more so, losing a quality backup quarterback, because that's something it's not easy to get in the NFL today, is a quality backup quarterback. And, Jacoby Brissett, fills that role perfectly. He ended up signing with the Miami Dolphins. But also they lost edge rusher Justin Houston to the Baltimore Ravens. But they also kind of made up for that addition in the offseason as well. So nothing, of huge importance for the Colts. They lost in the offseason. Their additions to me, I'm very, very excited about. They bring in, former Philadelphia Eagles quarterback Carson Wentz. He was, he had an MVP-like season when the current Indianapolis head coach Frank Wright was the offense coordinator in Philadelphia. I think this was a tremendous move. I called this for months and months and months before it happened. It makes so much sense to me. They also bring in offensive tackle Eric Fisher. Their offensive line is very, very good already, and the fact that you bring another quality starter in Eric Fisher to me is great for the Indianapolis Colts. And then you also bring Kwity Paye, who was one of the best edge rushers in the class. And, he was honestly really should not have been there with their pick. He really, makes up for that Justin Houston loss in the offseason. And, Justin Houston is still a pretty nice edge rusher, but he's getting up there in age. I would much rather have Kwity Paye right now due to his age over Justin Houston. I would rather have, obviously Carson Wentz over Jacoby Brissett as a starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. And, when Eric Fisher is a really nice, guy to bring in too. I just feel like the Colts, despite not making a ton of, offseason acquisitions, I feel like they definitely won the offseason when it comes to these 4 AFC South teams. And, with these, AFC South predictions, it's really interesting because I know some people might think, the Titans will win it. I just really think the Colts will end up winning it. Looking at these predictions here, record predictions for each NFL team, we're going to go from the bottom to up. I know it sounds crazy. I honestly and truly believe the Texans have a realistic chance of going 0-17 this year. And normally, when I see a prediction, somebody makes a prediction for a team and they go 0-16, I just laugh at it because it's just so stupid. But when you look at the Houston Texans, I honestly think it's a realistic chance. 14 of their 17 games they're playing against are teams who are playoff contenders. The only teams that they are playing who are not playoff contenders, in my opinion, are the Jacksonville Jaguars twice and the New York Jets. And I feel like both of those teams are a little bit better than people will give them credit for. And, they won 4 games last year with They won 4 games last year with Deshaun Watson, who's a top 8 quarterback in the NFL. Just 4 games with Watson. I could not imagine how many they're going to win with either Tyrod Taylor or Davis Mills. Like, if you can only win 4 games with an elite quarterback, and then you're going to try to win, games with a quarterback who's inconsistent and average at best, and Tyrod Taylor, they're not going to get many wins at all. And then you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, I have them with 3-14. I feel that they can win more games than this. I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe won 4 or 5. I think they're going to be competitive this season, and they're going to have some close games. But I think they're going to get at least 2 wins because both of those wins are going to be against the Houston Texans, in my opinion. And, with Trevor Lawrence, I think he's going to be good this season, but I do think, at times we're going to see him struggle, just like, for example, Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert was the best rookie quarterback we've ever seen last year, but even he struggled at times, and also Joe Burrow did too. But the Jaguars, I had them going 3-14. The Titans, I have them going 9-8. I don't think it's a guarantee. The Titans are honestly even in the playoffs, in my opinion. And I know I might sound crazy, but looking at this Titans team, I think they improved their roster a little bit, but not nearly as much as people think they did throughout the offseason. My main concern with them is Ryan Tannehill cannot be a game manager anymore. He has to put the team on his back and prove that he can win games for them and not just, play turnover-free football, throw for 200 yards or so. He needs to step up this season for the Tennessee Titans. And also their defense. Like I said, I believe they were last season in sacks. Their defense was atrocious last year, which honestly is kind of surprising because you look at Mike Vrabel. He's a defensive type of guy. But when you're playing against, teams like the Jaguars, who I'm not saying the Jaguars are going to have a ton of wins, but, the Jaguars who have a nice quality offense, different teams you're playing against, it might be difficult at times for the Titans to stop teams like the Jaguars offense because you don't know how to, stop them because you not see much film. And just because the Titans defense was so horrendous last season. And then we have the Colts at 13-4. I know that might be a little bit high, But especially with Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson's current injuries, these predictions were made before those injuries happened. But with the Colts, to me, I feel like they are obviously the favorites, and they 100% should be. You look at Phillip Rivers last season with the Colts. If Phillip Rivers was in his normal season, not the last year of his career, I honestly believe the Colts could have been a Super Bowl contender last year. And, you can make a case that last season was his worst year ever, and they were still able to nearly end up winning a playoff game against a great team in the Buffalo Bills. And to me, then you bring in, Carson Wentz, who was fantastic with Frank Wright during his time with the Philadelphia Eagles. You have a nice running back on Jonathan Taylor, who I think is going to have a great year. And you have a fantastic offensive line, at least a top 5 or 6 offensive line, in my opinion. Awesome defense, one of the best linebackers in the NFL, and Darius Leonard. I feel like this Colts team, I'm not going to say they're going to be in the Super Bowl, but I think if you have a dark horse Super Bowl contender in the AFC, I want to pick the Colts. I really think they're capable of doing it, and I think Carson Wentz is going to have a breakout year, surprise lots of people. And I fully expect the Colts to, end up winning the AFC South, followed by the Tennessee Titans. I can maybe see them winning maybe 10 games or so, possibly 11, but I doubt it. And then, the Jaguars, like I mentioned, had the winning 3. Can maybe see them getting 4 or 5. And then the Houston Texans going 0-17. I just do not see them winning many games this year, though. I really don't think they will win any. If they do win a game, I think it's going to be 1 game at the most. The Texans, in my opinion, are on course this season to be at least in contention one of the worst teams of all time, in my opinion. This is kind of the AFC South record prediction. So Colts 13-4, Titans 9-8, Jaguars 3-14, and the Houston Texans 0-17. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would really, really, really appreciate it. And I'll see you all next time on the Sports 200 Show.